Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Borealis Porto Covo diver. This watch is available from borealisport.com for €419. Borealis are a well-established microbrand. They were founded in 2013 and they're based in Portugal. This watch is available in the following colour options: black, white, blue and silver respectively. Of the four colour options, I think this blue version is the best looking. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this black vinyl or PU leather coated hard shell travel case, branded with the Borealis B emblem and Borealis logo. So I'll undo the zip and show you the interior. The interior is fully upholstered with black velour fabric, and it has this white block of foam which protects the watch in shipping. So fully upholstered with black velour fabric, elasticated web pocket on the underside of the lid. Base is also fully upholstered with black velour fabric to a good standard, and the watch sits on a padded pillow cushion which is black velour fabric upholstered to a good standard. So although basic, it does suffice, does look aesthetically pleasing, and does do a good job of protecting the watch in shipping. Now, with regards to the items, it only comes with one item, which is this cardboard warranty card. On the reverse, it details the 12 months warranty, and there's also a website link, borealiswatch.com/pages/warranty terms and conditions, should you wish to download the the terms and conditions of the 12-month international warranty. Also, there's space to fill in the customer name, invoice number, purchase date and watch model. The one thing that's notably absent from this piece is an owner's instruction manual with clear, concise diagrams, instructions in English, detailing the operation of the movement used, which is the Miyota Calibre 9039 automatic. So to clarify, all four colour versions, black, white, blue and silver respectively, are available in either date or no date versions. The date version is powered by the Miyota Calibre 9015. The no date version is powered by the Miyota Calibre 9039 respectively, so that's something to note. But nonetheless, between €0 and €500 in the low tier, it is mandatory, the industry standard is to have an owner's instruction manual, either in the form of a printed booklet or alternatively with a card, such as a plastic or cardboard card with a QR code that can be scanned with an Android or iPhone to download an owner's instruction manual. So I'd like to see Borealis include that, an owner's instruction manual in some form, because that would be more appropriate at €419. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, the Porto Covo diver is clearly an homage to the Zin 809. The Zin 809 was produced by Zin in the 1990s. Now, I'll point out the notable design elements which are taken from or inspired by the 809. First one is the bezel. Has a round stainless steel bezel with milled slots. Now, I've reviewed over 500 watches on my channel. This is the first time I've seen a round bezel with milled slots as per the Zin 809. This is a key design element and it's very aesthetically pleasing. Case shape is also Zin 809 inspired, with the crown at 4 o'clock and crown guards with the crown partially recessed. And lastly, the H-link bracelet is also an iconic design aspect of Zin pieces, including the 809 from the 1990s. So those three elements are included in this Porto Covo: slotted mill bezel, case shape with crown at 4, H-link bracelet. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter, we have a 42.5mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 12.1mm and a lug width of 20mm. The bracelet is flared and wider than the 20mm lug width. At its widest point it's 24mm and it tapers down to 18mm at the 2-button push micro adjustment clasp. Solid mill 316L grade stainless steel micro adjustment clasp, matte bead blasted as per the bezel, case, bracelet and clasp itself. Large bevels which are matte bead blasted, and they also match the matte bead blasted flanks. Pushers are also matte bead blasted effect. It's signed with the Borealis logo with high definition engraving, no sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge. Corners have been deburred very well. Undercuts to the flanks have also been deburred and chamfered very well, therefore no sharp edges. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished beveled pencil handset and the silver mirror polished floating indices. So, this is a notable feature of the Porto Covo diver, and I haven't seen this on any other watch, and I can tell you it's very aesthetically pleasing. The indices are floating, so to clarify, usually indices are printed on the dial, alternatively applied in the case of metal indices, but these indices are floating. They appear to float above the dial, but yet beneath the sapphire crystal. They actually are mounted onto arms, and the arms extend from the beveled chaptering. And it gives the appearance that they're floating because they're not affixed to the underside of the sapphire crystal, nor are they affixed to the dial. They're affixed to the arms, which are very small and you can't really see them. So this really enhances the piece because it gives it a real 3D effect. And although this is an homage to the Zin 809, floating indices weren't part of the 809. With the 809, the indices were applied to the dial, as usual. The other aspect I really like about this piece is it has a wavy textured dial. So rather than using a glossy enamel blue dial, which is navy blue, alternatively a navy blue sunray dial, it is a dial which is matte, but it has waves in it, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. Looks rather like the waves in the ocean. It's a very dark navy blue. The blue used reminds me very much of the same blue used on Seiko turtles, such as the SRP 773 and also the Seiko 5KX. It's got that very dark navy blue that Seiko used, almost black. It was also used on the SKX 009 Pepsi. It's had a very dark navy blue, just like black, but it's very aesthetically pleasing. It really does look like the waves in the ocean when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle. So as you can see, the hands, all 3 of the hands, the hour, the minute and the second hand, they all run underneath the floating indices. The hour hand is shorter, it's a pencil hand. I'm just going to rotate it because the hour hand doesn't move underneath all of the floating indices, but if you look at it now, when the hour hand is coming up to 12, it does go underneath the tip of the triangle index. But the minute hand, which is also a pencil minute hand, that goes all the way underneath. As you can see, the floating indices, as does the second hand. And it's the first watch I've seen, and I've reviewed over 500 in the last 5 years. First watch I've seen to use floating indices. I think more brands should do it. In terms of legibility, it doesn't diminish the functionality, the readability, the legibility of the piece, because the benefit of these large indices, which are floating, is with BGW9, you can clearly read the time both in the day and also night, and we'll do that in the Lume test, but I actually really like it. I think it works very well as an alternative to applying the indices to the dial. With regards to printing of the dial and the chaptering, white minute ticks are crisp, pure white, high definition, clearly legible. Borealis text logo has an aesthetically pleasing font, and I like the dial is balanced. It's not overbranded with unnecessary text and specification. Often low-tier brands and low-tier micro brands make the common mistake of over-branding the dial. It's too busy, too cluttered. They print too much information of the specification on the dial. Borealis have got it correct because we simply have the logo at 12, and then that's balanced by 2 lines of text at 6, 30 ATM, which denotes 300 meters of water resistance, and automatic, just the right amount of information for a dive piece. Dial looks clean as a result, and it's easy to read. Proportions of the beveled, faceted pencil hands is good, and I really like the size of the hands. I like the quality of the mirror polishing, and I like the quality of the floating indices. In terms of the mirror polishing, very aesthetically pleasing. We have a ceramic bezel insert with 60-minute ticks as per Rolex 5517 mil sub. Lume pip, white triangle, and I like the white minute ticks. Now, what I like about the ceramic bezel insert is it has concentric lines in it, concentric circles, rather than it just being a glossy finish to it, or alternatively just a matte finish. It does look like an aluminium bezel insert, but of course we have the benefit of ceramic being harder and more scratch resistant. But it's got these subtle concentric circles in it which add interest, they give it a slight texture. Nice matte finish to it rather than being glossy like an enamel blue look, and I like it. I think it's very well done. The engraving of the white minute ticks is good, and the engraving of the 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50 Arabic numerals is also high definition crisp. The font isn't too thick and blurry, it's very easy to read. The 60-minute ticks on the bezel complement the white 60-minute ticks on the chaptering, so the legibility of this piece is excellent. The date version of it has the date complication at 6, and that retains the symmetry of the dial versus being an asymmetrical dial with the date complication at the default position of 3. So both the date and the no date versions have symmetrical dials, which is good, and they both feature the floating indices. So let's look at the bezel. Solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel, matte B-blasted effect to match the case and the bracelet and clasp. As I've detailed, it has milled slots versus being a gear tooth profile, coin edge profile or scalloped bezel, which are the other industry standards, the default options. This is surprisingly grippy and tactile. Although it's smooth and circular with the milled slots, it's actually easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect, feels very smooth. One can feel the click spring engaging in the underside of the 120 grooves machined into the bezel. Feels solid. I really like the sound of it. Nice loud audible clicks. Doesn't feel rough or gritty. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. Doesn't get tighter or looser. Medium firm resistance. So to put this into perspective, it feels lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 139, which is too stiff. Feels very similar to a Seiko 5KX, which you may be familiar with. It's got that firm medium resistance, not too heavy, not too light, feels balanced. No lateral side-side play whatsoever, no back play whatsoever, so feels nice and tight. I really like it. This is not a sloppy bezel with too much play. And the resistance feels firm, but it feels smooth. That's what I like. It feels like a very refined bezel. This feels more like a bezel on a high tier piece or a mid tier piece, not a low tier piece between €0 and €500. A 419, this is one of the best feeling and sounding bezels I've experienced. Let's just check the alignment finally. One more click. Perfect. The Lume Pippin triangle perfectly aligned with the 12 o'clock floating index on the above the dial and the 60-minute tick on the chaptering. This is an example to other low-tier brands and other low-tier micro brands between €0 and €500 of how to get bezel execution perfected. This is the perfect bezel execution. Medium firm resistance, but not too stiff like a Steinhardt Ocean 139, just like a Seiko 5KX. No lateral side-side play, no back play whatsoever, even through the 360 degrees. Perfect alignment, bang on the centre. Stellar. Very grippy and tactile. That's the thing that surprised me. When I looked at it visually, because it's got this smooth circular profile with the milled slots, and the milled slots aren't very deep, they're subtle. I thought this was going to be very slippy and difficult to get purchase on, but actually it's very grippy and tactile. Even wearing a glove, you can get good grip of it. So it's deceptive because visually you would think it's going to be difficult to grip, but it's actually very grippy. So it's actually functional as well as aesthetically pleasing as per the Zin 809 slotted bezel. So let's test the crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel screw down crown, coin edge finished, matte B blasted effect, engraved with the B for Borealis emblem. Large chamfer which deletes the tips of the coin edge teeth, partially recessed into the crown guards as per the Zin 809 case, which this is an homage to. Let's test the execution. 300 metres of hermetic seal is strong specification. Silky smooth. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. Minimal number of turns required to unscrew. So when it's unscrewed, one can manually wind the Miyota caliber 9039 automatic to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. Feels very smooth and refined to manually wind. This is something I really like about it. You'll know this from my previous reviews. The 9000 series are premium grade Miyota calibers, and you'll know that the 9039 no date version and the 9015 date version are my two personal favourites, and I'm pleased to see that Borealis have selected those. For example, they could have taken the less expensive default option in order to reduce production costs per piece and maximise profit margin per piece of using the NH35A for the date version and the NH38A for the no date version. Negative is that would have increased the thickness of this piece to 13 plus, but it's only 12.1 because they have selected the more expensive option, which is the 9015 for the date version and the 9039 for this no date version. This is only 12.1 as a result. Correct decision. So, in terms of smoothness, doesn't feel rough or gritty like manually winding a PT5000, feels smoother than an NH35A, feels smoother than a SW200-1. That's something I like about the 9000 series. They feel very smooth and refined. Pulling it out to the first click position is the final click. It hacks the movement and we're now in the time setting position. Again, this is a benefit of Borealis not just using one caliber for both the date and the no date versions. Often low tier micro brands between €0 and €500, and low tier brands do this as well. They just use one caliber for both the date and the no date versions. For example, they'll just use an NH35A for both the date and the no date versions, and that means they only need to buy one batch of one type of movement versus two batches. For example, the NH38 no date and the NH35A date. Borealis have purchased two batches, the 9015 for the date version and the 9039 for the no date version. The benefit of that is there is no phantom date setting position on the no date versions like this. Excellent. So, we're now in the time setting position. Feels smooth when you cycle through the 12 hours, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. I like the way the hands move underneath the floating indices. It does take some getting used to because intuitively one has become accustomed to looking at hands above the indices, either printed indices on the dial or applied indices on the dial. But the hands run beneath, as you can see. But actually, in terms of legibility, once you become accustomed to it, it's not detrimental whatsoever. If anything, it looks more aesthetically pleasing. Seeing the floating indices at all times, the legibility and the clarity is actually enhanced. It does look different. It's novel. I like it. So, Feels smooth, clockwise and anti-clockwise, minimal backplay. When you rotate the coin edge crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there's an almost immediate response, so you don't need to take up a lot of slack. Pushing the crown back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. Let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup, perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. This is stellar screw down crown execution. It is silky smooth. Fantastic. This is what I like about Borealis being well established. They've been making watches since their foundation in 2013. This is not a new microbrand. They have some experience, and what I like about it is the build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are of a higher level as a result. Fantastic. Silky smooth. They could not improve upon it. 300 meters is strong specification. One has to bear in mind, this is only 12.1 millimeters thick. And that wouldn't be so impressive if this were 200 meters with a thinner sapphire crystal and thinner caseback. But this is 300, which is strong specification. I would expect this to be 13 plus, but it's not. 12.1 is fantastic. What I like about it is the chaptering isn't too deep. They have fully utilised or fully benefited or maximised. The 9039 is a lower profile version of the 9015. Effectively, it's the no-date version of it, but the benefit is it has a lower handstand height on the Canon pinion. The 9039 is a lower profile 9015, and of course, that means that the sapphire crystal can sit closer to the second hand on top of the Canon pinion, sit closer to the dial, and of course, the caliber is thinner, therefore the case can be less depth. So the good thing is, this doesn't need to be 13 thick, even though it's a 300 meter piece. It's only 12.1, which is fantastic. So screw down crown is excellent. Let's look at the bracelet in detail. H-link bracelet, as per the Zin 809, which this is an homage to, does visually look very similar to a Zin H-link bracelet. So to remind you, 20mm lug width internally, but it's flared, so it's wider than the lug width suggests. It's 20mm lug width, but 24mm taper, tapering down to 18. So let's check the articulation. Female putted end links. Articulate freely, don't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit. We do have some excess play. Longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play. I'd like to see Borealis tighten up the tolerances to an interference friction fit. But on a positive note, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Bracelet articulates freely. Doesn't feel stiff or kink. Flows nicely. It's a fluid bracelet. Looks good, feels good. Quality of the matte bead blasting to the top side, underside and flanks is fantastic. Beautiful sheen to it. Doesn't have the same luster as brushed satin finish. It's got a more grey anthracite tone due to the matte blasting of it. It makes it look more like the light's refracted rather than reflected. That's the point I'm making. So, quality of the matte bead blasting to the flanks and the underside and the top is done to the same standard. Let's check it for play. Again, there is some excess play, longitudinal, lateral, side, and up and down play. It's not sloppy, but they could tighten up the tolerances because, bear in mind, this does use the correct decision of 1.6mm screw pins. Now, I'm pleased to see screw pins used because often low tier 0 to €500 price point pieces from microbrands and brands, they use a production cost cutting measure of push pins, either split pins or alternatively pins and collars. But this uses screw pins, which are better, so they could tighten up the tolerances of these screw pins to make them more like a friction interference fit. It does feel fluid. I do like the articulation. I like it's not a stiff H-link bracelet. The comfort level and feel good factor is enhanced. On a positive note, no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. It doesn't feel sharp, doesn't scratch the wrist. It's got nice bevels on the top edge and the lower edge. Doesn't pull arm hairs. That's the other benefit. They just need to tighten it up to reduce the play, but it's not sloppy. Let's check the other side. Again, end link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit. Does have some excess play, longitudinal, lateral, side to side. It's okay, but they could tighten it up. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, it's fluid, no sharp edge to the top edge, low edge of the flanks, doesn't pull arm hairs, doesn't feel stiff, does have some excess play, so they could tighten it up. It's good. I like the feeling of it and I like the look of it. So, 2-button push micro adjustment clasp, 2-button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, they feel reliable and robust, opens freely. Solid mill 316L grade stainless steel internals. Now, what I like about it is they've made the correct decision by brushed satin finishing the internals rather than just matte bead blasting. Brushed satin finishing gives it a high quality look. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. Flawless brushed satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp corners to the centre section. Beautiful luster to the brushed satin finishing. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. has some slight lateral side to side play, so they need to tighten up the tolerance of that one. Right hand hinge pin finally, which is actually a spring bar. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. So to clarify, left hand hinge pin is correct, it's tight. Right hand hinge pin is correct, it's tight. Just the centre hinge pin has too much side to side and lateral play. They need to tighten up the tolerances. So what they could do here is they could rectify this simply by, or correct it simply by increasing the diameter of the pin, which is riveted either end. Alternatively, drill a smaller diameter hole in the centre section. That would just tighten it up. It is okay. My concern with play in hinge pins, as always, is long-term durability with daily wear and tear. How long is it going to be before the pin becomes ovalised, or the hole becomes ovalised and therefore puts the pin under excess shear load and causes the pin to shear and drop out? That's what I look for. So it's okay. It's not sloppy because the left and the right hand pins are correct. It's just the centre one needs tightening up. Let's look at the case back. So very aesthetically pleasing. It's engraved rather than being a forged hydraulically pressed case back. Quality of the engraving is high definition. Doesn't feel rough. Feels smooth, which is good. The mirror polishing is good. It's concentric CNC lathe tool machine, 300 metres of hermetic seal, matte speed blasted background, and then we've got this mermaid emblem which adds interest to it. Engraved around the circumference with a specification of the piece. Milled slots are deburred and chamfered very well, no sharp edges, and we've also got matte bead blasted panels in between the milled slots to add some interest to it. So it's very well finished. Now what I like about it is, for 300 metres, it is low profile. We're not looking at a deep bubble back case back. For example, if this were powered by the NH35A or the NH38, as I've detailed, this would need a deeper bubble back case back in order to provide adequate clearance between the case back and rotor. And of course, the NH35A and NH38 are thicker calibers and therefore they require more clearance. This 9039 is thinner than the 9015, as I've detailed, but the other benefit is the rotor needs less clearance, and so therefore the case back can be thinner and flatter. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor, and the other benefit is it slims this piece down from to 12.1 rather than being 13 plus, which would be too thick. So it's flat, sits close to the wrist, feels comfortable. Now, solid end links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece, but we've got standard stainless steel spring bars. I think Borealis could introduce or update this to quick release stainless steel spring bars, because that would negate the need for a spring bar tool if one wants to exchange the H-link bracelet for a strap. But good quality nonetheless. Underside to the head of the piece has large bevels on the flanks. That deletes the sharp edges. That enhances comfort level and feel good factor. Underside to the head of the piece is matte bead blasted effect to a good standard, so the finishing is good. So let's look at the micro adjustment clasp. First of all, I'll give you a wrist shot because I want to show it to you on the maximum minimum. So just bear with me, I'm going to remove my Concord 40 and then we'll continue. So this has a ratcheting micro adjustment clasp, as you can see, with 10mm on the fly adjustment. So spring-loaded trigger on the underside, which is brushed satin finish to a good standard. Now it's now on its minimum. I want to give you a wrist shot on minimum and maximum extension. So as you can see, even on the minimum of the 10mm on the fly adjustment, excuse me, I can easily slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. This indicates this will fit up to a very large 8.5-inch wrist size, because on maximum extension, with the additional 10mm on the fly adjustment, it will fit up to a 9-inch plus wrist size. So on its minimum 10mm adjustment, I can still fit an index finger beneath it. To clarify, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to size this down to a 6-inch wrist size up to a very large 9-inch. Now I'm going to do the same with a maximum extension. So depressing the trigger or button with the thumbnail, it deploys smoothly. We're now on the maximum 10mm extension, and this will show you its absolute limit. Now, having sized the bracelet, this is with all the links in it, I can actually slide 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. So this would actually fit up to a 9-inch plus wrist size, very large wrist size. 6-inch minimum, 9-inch maximum. And I'm going to move it down to the minimum again, just to remind you, because that actually fits my wrist very well. Now, clicking mechanism. Nice, loud, audible clicks. Heavily indexed, 10mm on the fly adjustment. Deploys smoothly. Clicks in with good, solid, heavy clicks. Feels good. I like it. When it's on its minimum, there is some lateral side-to-side play due to the H-links. They could tighten up because we have lateral side-to-side play, up and down play, longitudinal play. They could tighten up the tolerances. On its maximum extension, same amount of play exists. Some slight lateral side-to-side, up and down and longitudinal play, but it is okay. I like the smooth action of it. Nice, loud, audible clicks. So I'll leave it on the minimum. That fits my wrist well. One index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp is the correct sizing method. You'll know that from my previous reviews. Very aesthetically pleasing. Now, normally I'd be critical of a 40mm head of the piece, not using the perfection personified 20-16 taper. However, in this case I'm not going to be critical. So why is that? Well, it does have an angular tonneau case, as per the Zin 809. Therefore, it does need some more meat on the bracelet, because if they'd used a 20-16 H-link bracelet, it would have looked undersized for this style of case. 24 to 18 is an aggressive taper. It's flared and wider, 24 at the lugs, 18 at the clasp. But in this case, it actually looks very well because it's very similar to the proportions of the Zin 809 flared H-link bracelets, and this is an homage to it. Suits the tonneau case with the angular profile to the lugs. I think they've made the correct decision. 20-16 would have been undersized. Subjectively, one could say they could have used the alternative industry standard 22-18, but in this case I like the extra meat of the flared bracelet because the taper is very aggressive. 24-18 is an aggressive taper, but plenty of meat on the bracelet. This piece does need it because head of the piece is heavy, and therefore it does need a heavy bracelet to balance it. If they use 20-16 or even 22-18, there wouldn't have been enough meat on the bracelet. Bracelet would have felt too light for the head of the piece, which is heavy. Clasp also is good because it's long, milled, gives some heft to the bracelet. So the head of the piece is balanced by the bracelet and clasp. That's the point I'm making. Now, in terms of curvature, the fit is excellent. Often micro adjustment clasps are too thick, they're too wide, they're too bulky, and they project too far from the wrist. This has a nice curved undercuts, as you can see. It wraps around the wrist very well. Curvature is good for a 6 to 7, curvature is good for a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. It's not bulky, not too much overhang, so even if you have a smaller 6 to 7 inch wrist, it's not going to be too long and have too much overhang on the ends, which is good. Very nice to see 10mm on the fly adjustment. The matte bead blasted effect to it, including the bevel, gives it a real tool watch aesthetic. It does look visually very similar to a Zin 809 from the 1990s. Matte bead blasted effect to the slotted bezel, matte case, matte bracelet, even on the flanks and the clasp itself. Fantastic. Gives the piece a real tool watch aesthetic. Now, what I like about it is the floating indices, the legibility is good. Also, the wavy texture dial is very aesthetically pleasing, nice 3D effect. Matte finish, concentric circles are subtle in the ceramic, but they add interest to it. Slotted bezel is very aesthetically pleasing. I really like it. This gives the piece a real tool watch aesthetic. Visually, it does look very similar to a Zin 809, but of course we have the modern day enhancements of ceramic bezel insert rather than aluminium. The sapphire crystal has AR coating. Legibility is stellar. When you look at the piece straight on, the sapphire crystal looks invisible, and the floating indices look like they're affixed to the underside of the sapphire crystal. That's how close the floating indices run to the underside of the sapphire crystal. They look like they're touching. So it's a very interesting look because one is used to seeing indices printed or applied to a dial, and therefore they're sunk deeper away from the sapphire crystal. But when you look at this piece straight on, it looks like the indices are actually affixed to the underside of the sapphire crystal, like they're touching it. The legibility, therefore, is really enhanced. I could argue this is better than applied indices on a dial. The legibility of this is good. You can read the time very clearly because the indices are very close to the dial. They look like they're touching. Sorry, the indices are very close to the sapphire crystal. That's the point I'm making. Legibility is fantastic. And once you become accustomed to the hands running beneath the indices rather than above, it becomes very easy to read. So, looks good. Now, proportions. Does have a compact short lug to lug, 42.5. This is well below the 48 sweet spot. Normally I'd be critical of this, as you know, for a 40mm. 48 is the perfect lug to lug. In this case, I'm not going to be critical. So why is that? This does have a large end link, as per the Zin 809. And I'm not going to be critical of that because it is an homage to it. But it actually needs a short compact lug to lug of 42.5, because had they used 48, this would make the end of the case slightly too long with these angular profile lugs, and of course the flared bracelet with a large 24mm taper. This would look far too bulky, far too big, so by shortening up the lug to lug to 42.5 and making it compact, they can use this large end link, and it actually fits very well. There's a minimal gap beneath the end link in the bracelet. Case doesn't look too long. Also deletes some of the heft, some of the meat, because it is a thick case. So, does need that. I like the taper, 24-18, very aesthetically pleasing. Now, what I like about this piece above all else, this is only 12.1 as I've detailed. They have fully maximised, fully optimised the benefits of using the 9039. So to remind you, the 9039 has a lower hand stack height on the cannon and pinion. Benefit of that is sapphire crystal can sit closer to the second hand on the Canon pinion, also sits closer to the dial. It's thinner than the 9015, which is thinner anyway, but the flanks don't look too thick and slab-sided. Case back is very flat, so the case fits very snug to the wrist. That's the benefit. Needless to say, at 12.1 it's easily going to slip underneath the shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. You'll know this from my previous reviews. 13mm and below is the perfect sweet spot regardless of case size, because a 13 or below case will easily fit beneath the shirt cuff. So at 12.1 it's 0.9, nearly 1mm thinner than the sweet spot. It's a very flat piece, very low profile, easily slips underneath the shirt cuff. Feel good factor, comfort level are 10 out of 10. Another thing I like about it is a heavy piece at 161 grams, but as I've detailed, it does have a very long bracelet. Even on its minimum, it's still large enough for my 8-inch wrist. This will fit an 8.5-inch wrist. So 161 grams. It's 11 grams above the sweet spot. That's the point I'm making. But needless to say, even I would remove 2 links from the bracelet for my 8-inch wrist. If you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you're going to be removing 6 to 8 links. If you have a 7 to 8-inch wrist, you're going to be removing 4 to 6 links. That will easily reduce the heft of this bracelet and head of the piece down to only 150 or below. Therefore, the comfort level and feel good factor will hit the sweet spot of 150 or below. As it stands, 161 is 11 grams too heavy, but I'm not going to be critical because it does have a very long bracelet. Proportions are good, so I think if you reduce it to 150 or below, the feel good factor and the comfort level will be maximised. This is a very comfortable, balanced piece as it stands. Doesn't feel heavy like a solid slab of 316L grade stainless steel sitting on top of the wrist. Actually curves around the wrist very well, even though it's a flat profile case as per the Zin 809. It's very close to the wrist, so although it's flat rather than being curved, it actually fits around the wrist very well. And I think even for a 6 to 7-inch wrist, it's going to fit very well due to the compact lug to lug of 42.5 and the fact it's only 12.1. So this will fit 6 to 7-inch wrist well. It will also fit 7 to 8-inch wrist well. Wrist presence is good at 40, but it doesn't dominate the wrist. Doesn't feel too large, doesn't look too large. Legibility is stellar. Aesthetically pleasing. I like the matte be blasted effect. It gives it a real tool watch aesthetic. Visually it does look very similar to a Zin H-Link bracelet, and it does visually look very similar to the Zin 809 due to the slotted bezel and case shape. So fantastic feel good factor and comfort level. Let's do a lume test. So just bear with me, I'm going to put back on my Concord 40 and then I'll continue. So this uses BGW9. Now to clarify, this piece is available with 2 different lume options. It comes in 4 colours, black, white, blue and silver respectively. And they use 2 different colour looms. They use C3, which is green, and they also use BGW9. This blue version uses BGW9, so that's something to note. When you're selecting the colour, you need to also think about which colour you prefer, because some of the versions come with C3, some come with BGW9, so you need to be mindful of that. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So this uses BGW9 on the ceramic bezel insert, which is fully lumed, the floating indices and also the baton handset, which are faceted. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is stellar. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the ceramic bezel insert, 5 to 6 layers on the floating indices, 5 to 6 layers on the faceted beveled hands, and I can tell you this is stellar. Now, one has to be magnanimous. It is difficult to engrave ceramic with enough depth to take a full 5 to 6 layers. There is room for improvement with regards to the Arabic numerals. They could engrave them slightly deeper, but I appreciate they're very fine fonts. They're not a very deep, thick font, as per a Rolex Serichrome bezel, which is inlaid with platinum, as an example. The font is finer, so it's difficult to engrave them deep enough, but also have a large enough plot for 5 to 6 layers to be applied. With this, they've done the best they can with the available space on the bezel, and of course the font they're using, which is fair enough. Minute ticks are also inlaid, but again, same problem. The depth of the minute ticks and also how thin they are makes it difficult to infill them with 5 to 6 layers. Now the problem is if they engrave the Arabic numerals and the minute ticks deeper, it's going to make the ceramic bezel insert prone to cracking with stress fractures. So I appreciate the technical problems they have with this. The other alternative with fully lumed bezels like this is to use sapphire crystal, because sapphire crystal, you can inlay it beneath it with BGW9 and it's possible to get greater depth without it fracturing with stress fractures. Ceramic is more difficult because it's hard and brittle, and of course the deeper you engrave it, the weaker it becomes, and therefore it becomes more prone to cracking. So I appreciate the problems they're having when they produce these, but I think there's room for improvement with the bezel. The triangle is fully loomed. That's a pleasant surprise. I thought it was just going to be the lume pip in the centre of the triangle, the white triangle, but it's actually fully loomed, which is good. Minute ticks are okay, Arabic numerals are okay, the hour markers are excellent on the bezel. Floating indices are stellar, 5 to 6, and the pencil hands are stellar, 5 to 6. Now you can see, if you look at the minute hand, you can see it's now beneath the 6 o'clock index, but you can still read the time easily. And even though the second hand sweeps beneath the floating indices, you can see, because of the lume pip on it, you can see it sweeping around. So it actually works very well. Now I'm just going to unscrew the crown, and I'm going to actually move the hour hand around the dial because I just want to see how it looks in the dark when it floats, when it moves beneath the floating indices. So as you can see, the hour hand now is going to come up to 12 o'clock and go beneath the 12 o'clock triangle floating index. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to autofocus. I'll charge it again, and then you'll be able to see it properly. So you can see the hour hand is now going beneath the triangle, but you can still read it quite easily. And even when the minute hand is beneath, now that's with the hour and minute hand beneath the 12 o'clock triangle index, you can still read it's 12 o'clock, and then we'll move it around to 1 o'clock. So although the hands do disappear beneath the indices, you can easily read the time. So for example, I'll put it at 3 o'clock. You can now see it's 3 o'clock. It does work, and it does take some getting used to, but once you become accustomed to the hands moving beneath the floating indices, you can actually read the time in the dark very well. I like it, so I think it adds interest to the piece. It's novel, it's different, and I think Borealis deserve credit for, rather than just making a direct copy or clone of the Zin 809 when they're making an homage to it, they've made some changes, such as the wavy textured dial, ceramic bezel insert, which is fully loomed rather than an aluminium bezel insert, and also the floating indices, of course. The floating indices were not a feature of the Zin 809. So really this is like an updated modern day version of it. Had Zin reissued the 809 from the 1990s, made to modern day specification. It's good. I like it. In daylight, as I've detailed, there's a perfect colour tone match between the bezel, the floating indices and the handsets. They look white. They don't look more cream or white in any of the places. But in the dark, they have the same blue tone. The potency of the exciter is good. Subjectively, and I'm being very critical here for a low tier piece, I think they could engrave the minute ticks and also the Arabic numerals deeper and inlay them with more BGW9. But the hour markers on the bezel are good, and the triangle is also good. And of course, floating indices, handsets, stellar. So excellent, very aesthetically pleasing. I like the BGW9. Right, so let's discuss the movement because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So, as I've detailed, you'll know this from my previous reviews. The Miyota 9000 series are premium grade. The 9039 and the 9015 are my two personal favourites. The reason why I like both of those movements is because they are accurate, they are reliable, build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are excellent. And what I like above all else is the 9039 is low profile. It has a low cannon pinion hand stack height, and that means it's a very thin calibre, and therefore the thickness of a piece can be reduced as per this piece down to only 12.1. And I'm pleased to see Borealis have fully optimised the benefits of it being a thin calibre. So, the architecture of the 9039 is based upon the 9015. They are the same. The only difference is they delete the date complication from the 9015 to create the 9039. Other than that, the architecture is identical. The only other difference is the hand stack height on the cannon pinion. The 9039 has a lower hand stack height. The cannon pinion is reduced. Benefits of that is the sapphire crystal can sit closer to the second hand on the top of the cannon pinion, and therefore it also sits closer to the dial. Therefore, legibility, clarity, functionality, readability are all enhanced. The 9039 is my favourite Miyota calibre of them all. So, 24 joules. Runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. Benefit of that is one has a nice smooth 4 Hz sweep rather than the stutter or judder of a 3 Hz sweep as per the NH35A, running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications, and they work well. 42-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. Stated accuracy is -10 to +30 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Borealis are doing a good job of regulating the calibers they're using. They're regulating the 9039 in 5 positions to chronometer grade accuracy. So although the stated accuracy is -10 to +30, which is wide, they're actually regulating to better than that. This one is running consistently at plus 2 seconds per day. Plus 2 is within -4 to +6 chronometer accuracy. It is stellar. So this is accurate, it is reliable. Its reliability has been proven beyond question because Miyota have produced the 9039 since 2018. So at this stage in 2025, its reliability is proven beyond question. It is incredibly accurate, incredibly reliable. Build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are a level above the NH35A and also a level above the 8215 and other 8000 series calibers. I would argue the 9039 is equal quality to a standard grade Sellita SW200-1, standard grade Soprod caliber P024 or standard grade ETA 2824-2. In terms of reliability, it is a level above the PT5000 made by HK Precision Technology. So no reliability issues reported whatsoever. Manual winding feels smoother, that's the benefit. It's a level above the NH35A, a level above the 8215. I really think Borealis deserve credit here because they, as I've detailed, they could have taken the less expensive option of using the NH35A for the date version and the NH38A for the no date version. However, negative is this piece would be 13 plus as a result because they're thicker calibers. They've taken the more expensive option of the 9039 for the no date and the 9015 for the date respectively. This increases production cost per piece and therefore diminishes profit margin per piece for Borealis. But from the collector's perspective, you're getting a premium grade of caliber equal to an SW200-1. So that's good. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, €419, we're in the low tier, €0 to €500. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality, and yes, it is unquestionably excellent value at €419. One has to appreciate the specification of this piece is loaded. Fully loomed ceramic bezel insert with BGW9, floating indices add interest, H-link bracelet, micro adjustment clasp, and it's very low profile at only 12.1. 300 meters is strong specification. Bezel execution is stellar. Screw down crown execution is stellar. They could not improve upon it. Some of the best bezel execution, some of the best screw down crown execution I have ever experienced in the low tier. Borealis have got it perfected. Visually, it looks very aesthetically pleasing. It is a good homage to the Zin 809 from the 1990s. And I really like the blue textured dial. It's just a great, interesting piece with the floating indices. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Borealis Porto Covo diver. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.